Time's up, Admiral.
Here it comes.
Chevron 1, loaded.
For my ally is the Force, and the powerful ally it is. Life creates it, makes it grow.
You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Cry hammer, and let's set the dogs of war.
Chevron 2 is loaded.
Conan, what is best in life? Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, to hear the lamentation of your women.
It's all in the reflexes.
I'll also say that you're heavy into martial arts, Tai Chi and all that killer stuff. I suppose we have to register you as a lethal weapon.
Chevron 3 encoded.
And somebody ought to belt you in the mouth. But I won't. I won't. The hell I will.
Chevron 4 encoded.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Chevron 5 encoded.
You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Chevron 6 encoded.
Knock while you can, monkey boy.
Great Scott. Back off, man. I'm a scientist.
I thought I'd die fighting side by side with Al.
What about side by side with a friend?
A day may come when the courage of men fails, when we forsake our friends and break all bonds of fellowship. But it is not this day.
Chevron 7 is locked.
Jed, guess what just happened?
What just happened?
Broke another wheel on my chair just now. I didn't fall.
Another one?
Yeah.
I expect Jeremy to have this problem, not you.
Well, I come in for a hard landing.
Ah.
No, I'm not a gentle.
You got a lead
steer.
ass.
No, I just come in, I just drop in, just boom. I just drop in.
Mm.
And yeah, so I just now I have to do emergency surgery on this wheel too. I don't even know if I have any extra bonus wheels. I don't know if I have any left. I had a box of them that I bought, and they don't fit too. That's the problem. They don't because the piece came out. So I have one all duct taped up on one leg here, and now I got to do it for this emergency surgery.
I got to do the same thing. Keep screws for my armrest because like, when I adjust, I put too much weight on it, and this one on the left here is broken.
One of mine wiggles all the time. You guys can't see it. It wiggles all the time because it doesn't want to stay in, but one does. So hi everybody, welcome to Saturday Night Drive-In, where we're having all kinds of problems. It seems I am off camera. I apologize because my building is having that semi-regular thing where my upload speeds tank, so I would be frozen in very memeable, probably facial expressions. So I'm not going to give you guys that opportunity. I'm off camera. Oh, come on. Yeah, fuck you all.
You're robbing us.
Yeah, robbing you of making fun of me. Yeah, you guys don't get an opportunity for that enough, do you? Anyway, so welcome, everybody. We hope you've had a good weekend so far. I'm doing better health-wise. The cold I've been battling for the past week is on the way out, and I'm ready. Oh, I'm ready for this. Jed, how are you today?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk about this movie because I think we're going to have a good discussion. It's not going to be one of those movies where we just gush about it for an hour, but I don't think it's going to be anywhere near as Legend bad or Golden Child bad, at least in the reverse. But I think it's going to be a good discussion because I definitely don't come in the opposite end of the camp than Adam for this one. It'll be a lot more middle of the road perspective for me. So I'm actually looking forward to this.
I'm going to ask you this right now. I'm going to ask you again at the end of the show. What the fuck was this movie about?
I'm going to answer with a single term. It's a tech demo. That's what I had to think through this whole movie. It is beautiful, but nonsense. It's beautiful nonsense. Denny Villeneuve's type of movie. It's going to be my insult.
That is for sure.
All spectacle, wacky, nonsensical substance.
We all know I'm a fan of show don't tell. I never thought I would ever say in one of these discussions that show don't tell was abused. It was horrendously abused in this movie.
There were parts that I enjoyed, specifically the scene where the flight attendant is wearing those sticky shoes, and they specifically just show you what the shoe brand is, and you get what's going on with the technology there. That one I really liked, but there's a lot of bad abuse show don't tell.
And then there's exposition with I got to tell you, it's not as though the exposition even tells you anything.
No,
it's exposition of pointless dialogue. If you guys can't tell, I don't like 2001: A Space Odyssey, and I think I'm going to say it right now. I'm going to say it for most of the show today. Stanley Kubrick is an overrated hack. I could say definitively majority of everything I've ever seen from him, I don't like it.
I would agree to a certain extent. I definitely believe that he is overrated, massively so. But I've only seen a couple of his films. The biggest ones prior to this one, which I'd never seen before, were The Shining and Full Metal Jacket. I've seen both of those before. I enjoyed both of them, but they were not to the level that people told me that they were. He's massively overrated. Same level I think that Tarantino is to a certain extent. I'm not a huge fan of Tarantino.
I'm not a huge fan of Tarantino, but I don't despise Tarantino. I despise Kubrick.
I can see it after this movie. I did enjoy this movie overall for my first watch through, but I can totally understand people despising it and people who watched it when it initially came out falling in love with it and being obsessed with it. I can see both perspectives.
Because I watch a movie and I want a story and I want characters. And we can have movies that are light on both of them, light on story, light on characters, and one part can carry the other, get it forward. But I go into this movie and I don't get anything from either of those areas in this. The story is non-existent. Not really. And guys, I know I was scanning the chat earlier. We're talking the movie. We're not talking the source material.
I've not read the book. No idea.
So this commentary is about the movie. The source material may have a story. I don't know what that is. If it is there, it sure as hell isn't present in this movie. And characters. Dave and Frank, businessman who gets destroyed by the monolith when a high-pitched thing goes off later on. A bunch of rando scientists. Hal, these aren't characters. These are people lines. And just giving lines to move from one scene to the next. To give you some sense of purpose of maybe why a scene is happening. That's what's going on here. And to me, I can't latch on to anything. To go back to what I said a moment ago, looking through, I'm just checking all of his things. Okay, there's one Kubrick movie I can say I like, Spartacus. I like Spartacus. You know why? Also, Kirk Douglas, that's why. It's got a great cast. Spartacus is probably the only Kubrick movie I can honestly say I probably like. But everything else that I've seen on this list, Clockwork Orange, people love Clockwork Orange. I hated Clockwork Orange. I hated it. Hate every second of it. I didn't like The Shining. Didn't like Full Metal Jacket. And Burn in Hell, Eyes Wide Shut. Burn it.
Oh, of course.
Burn in Hell.
This was an interesting experience to me. And it's interesting that you mentioned Clockwork Orange as well, because I'm currently writing a new sci-fi novel that most people know about. And I've heard from the test readers that I have that there's similarities in my work with 2001 and Clockwork Orange. I've never watched either of them, but it is an interesting experience to see some of the stuff that I do in concept wise, at least in 2001, see manifested. Like I've read so many books, sci-fi books that talk about the curvature of a spaceship spinning to make it so you have gravity being down, but I've never seen it on screen in an accurate way that made sense until this film. So this film I enjoyed from that perspective alone, where it's a hard science fiction, and I love hard science fiction. So those types of techniques, those technologies that they use from both the filmmaking perspective and the in-universe perspective.
I could see why you like that,
those.
because we've had these conversations on streaming in private that you are fascinated by that stuff. And
absolutely,
I can understand it. And this is 1968. They're first sending shit into space at this point, and science fiction, fantasy had existed as a genre, but now hard science fiction, their writers are first delving into it at this point. I mean, up until this point, there hasn't been anything to be a definitive science fiction novel. Asimov is first getting started at this point.
And Doctor Who's already started, but to this level,
but that's
still
different.
Science fantasy.
That's science. You're right. That's science fantasy. So when they were starting to put together ideas of science fiction, they were trying to keep it, as you said, hard. Yes, Star Trek has existed at this point, but they decided to go not logical technology in our lifetime. They jumped centuries ahead to possible technology that may not even be possible.
Oh yeah, 2001 was just a blatant fool's dream. If they had said like 3001, I could totally believe this stuff could exist by then, even halfway there. But you think in 30 years they're gonna have manned missions to Jupiter, at least from when this movie came out.
Yeah,
I don't think we're gonna have that 30 years from now.
Yeah, I mean, not unless. No, I got no answer to that. Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah,
I mean, what we're missing is a technology leap in terms of energy. For this kind of stuff, for that we need a technology leap in energy, and we don't even see that on the horizon with the way current world views on energy is. So, what we have, go ahead.
Oh, but yeah, just from that perspective, I enjoyed the movie, and I think I saw it more as a tech demo, as I mentioned earlier, and I think as a tech demo, it works very well because I thought the film was gorgeous, even compared to a lot of the present day stuff. I could believe this movie came out in the early 2000s. I would legitimately believe it from the copy I saw. I don't know if it's been restored or something, but the copy I saw was immaculate. Just
it looked nice and clean. I mean, it looked.
I might have seen a restored one, but
the one I saw looked pretty good. I guess it was Blu-ray, so.
But it was it's a beautiful film. But when it comes to the writing, there's a lot of self-indulgence, and I'll say it's pseudo-intellectual nonsense.
Oh,
and yes, I saw all the philosophy that everyone else did, making a metaphor for evolution doesn't actually make sense. It doesn't. And Stanley Kubrick has admitted it doesn't make sense. He doesn't know the solution to the movie. So people who are getting so far into it and acting like this is a super smart film.
So what? So Space Baby means nothing.
So yeah, the explanation I saw in an interview from him from I believe 2013, he said, "I don't know what the resolution is. I don't know what that scene means. The way I interpret it is he is in a zoo, that the monoliths were a trap for human beings. So basically the aliens who made the monoliths are like, we want smart people in our zoo. Let's make those monkey men smart, and then they'll be smart enough to fall into our Stargate trap, and we'll put them in a zoo. He just accidentally evolved to look like us. Man, that sucks. Well, send him home then."
All right, let's
the evolution stuff is garbage. The beginning and the end of the movie are nonsense. The monkey stuff, the music's good. All right.
All right. I'm trying to figure out how to approach this, because normally we would plod through the plot a little bit. We talk about the characters, but we can't do that with
difficult.
This.
I think this movie for you and everyone else would be substantially better if they cut out all the monkey man stuff, had the initial scientist discovery of the monolith be a short prologue, and then cut out the stuff at the end and make 90% of the movie Frank, Hal, and Dave, and explore like why are they going to Jupiter? Do some
There's no explanation of anything.
The best I can assume is they find a signal on the monolith that's on the moon that connects it to the Stargate, and they're going to investigate. But that's
that's you get the recording after Dave shuts down Hal. You see the recording. We found the monolith, and it sent the shot to Jupiter, and that's why we're sending you here.
So I can get that, but all the interesting stuff, all the classic lines that people remember, like "I can't do that, Dave." That's all with Hal and Dave and Frank, and that's an interesting story. It needs to be better written, better acted, better dialogue, but there's something there that I can see.
That's early on. What if there was no concept of artificial intelligence yet? They were just computers, smart computers, and of course, the idea of AI going rogue is something that is now overdone today. Let's be honest. It is.
But at the time, it was pretty new. I'd imagine.
Yeah, but they barely go into it.
Yeah,
And
that's the thing.
we don't even know why Hal malfunctioned.
That's a big thing. Why did Hal malfunction? He kind of knew what the mission was, but that's the only explanation that they give. And I don't believe that this supercomputer, which has control of every aspect of the ship, where they have to ask to move their chairs in forward, can't do anything to stop Dave once he gets back into the hangar bay.
I know.
I do like that sequence of him trying to figure out the decompression wouldn't work, but it's better than other sci-fi that I've seen of how you would get back in. Other sci-fi's like, oh, you can breathe, you can survive without breathing for a couple minutes, so you can do that in space too. No, that's not true. You can't just survive in space for several minutes.
Lagasse in the chat says, explain it 2010. Fuck that. Don't explain it then. Explain it now.
Yeah, you can't. That's a fundamental part of the story, and if it has to be explained in a sequel, then it's a failing of the original.
And again, we're talking. I don't care if it was meant to be explained in the books. If
the book could be substantially better, but that's not what this is.
Yeah. So I mean, I want the movie to make sense. I want to. There are no stakes in this movie except for suddenly Dave and Frank feel like Hal's about to do something horrible. That's it. And it's really, when you look this movie, cut out Monkey Man Playground, where they learned that a bone could be a weapon.
So long.
But if you cut that, I'm just saying, if you cut that out, if you cut out dancing in space, you cut out dancing in space, spinning ships. Listen, using beautiful actual classical music as a substitute for content, sorry, failure. So cut all that shit out. If you take every single human interaction and contact with the boring-ass show don't tell of heavy breathing, goddamn the heavy breathing.
Mine was the cicada sound effect of their spacesuits. That's what was bothering me.
I needed 10, 15 minutes of heavy breathing at a time while we do shit. I needed that so badly. Cut out all that shit and out of the direction. And how much actual interaction time do you have in this movie? I would say maybe 40 minutes of human interaction.
That stuff I thought was decent, those 40 minutes, but it's just so lost in the mire of unnecessary. It's self-indulgent. That's the best way I can describe this movie, because even the scenes that you could incorporate with the metaphor of evolution and stuff, like the beginning of the Monkey Man stuff, we got that within 5 minutes. We didn't need 20 minutes or whatever ridiculous amount of time we had. We get their Monkey Men. Did they get a monolith? They figure out tools, even though I don't imagine Club was that big of a discovery tool-wise, picking up something to hit something else. I imagine they picked up rocks before that point. But regardless, we got that story we could have understood everything from that within 3 minutes.
Now I have Club. Now we kill animal for meat. Now we eat meat. Now I have Club. I could be dominant ape and beat up other apes.
They overused that song so much. The classic song from the opening.
The Strauss.
It got so old. Well, the classics, the classical music too. They kept reusing
everything.
That.
Everything got reused.
But it was like 2 songs that they had, and then there was the very cool suspenseful music that they played a couple times. I enjoyed that stuff too.
At this point, I'm so annoyed. I like choral music too. It soundtracks all stuff. But at this point, I'm so annoyed that it's just we're linked to another drawn out scene. Oh, look, we're coming up on the monolith. Let's have some choral, draw it out. Oh, we're coming up on the monolith in space. Let's draw it out with that. I mean, there's literally no dialogue for the last 35, 40 minutes of the movie. Once Dave is all... The fact that Dave just continues by himself. Everybody is dead. Hal has killed everybody else on the mission.
He can't complete the mission, and they don't say that he contacts Earth again, asks for orders. They don't mention anything. Can he still contact Earth, or did Hal damage the equipment to such a degree that that's impossible? They just don't explain things, and you can do that stuff with show versus tell. But the show that versus tell that he's focusing on is stuff that we don't need to know, and a lot of it doesn't actually mean anything with the pseudo intellectual false philosophy stuff.
You touch the monolith. Something's happening. Lots of pretty lights and freeze frame shots of Dave in pain as he goes through it, and then he's in a room.
Long. Some of those effects were beautiful initially before they got to just the color corrected landscape shots. Those were ridiculous. But the space shots that they did of the stars and the nebulas and stuff like that, I like
so
those
checked
for
out
a
at this
few
point.
minutes, but it was way too much.
I'm so checked out at this point. I can't appreciate. I know that people argument that cinematography is great. I'm so bored and frustrated that it's you could be handing me the most beautiful plate of food in the world, but I've burned my tongue and I won't be able to taste anything.
Yeah, which is fair. It's got to all work together or it can ruin. Just like we say something like characters can sometimes save a boring plot or something like that.
Yeah.
At a certain point, they can't save.
We've said that before plenty of times. How, this movie is being shit, but this character is keeping me entertained. I'm watching to see how this plays out on their little story arc. That's it. And there's nothing. Is there anything compelling in this movie to make you go through? Are you even wondering about the meta of this whole thing by the end of it?
Oh no! By that point, I'm just so I'm praying for the end of those colorful landscapes. It is a drug trip, and it was pointless. We got it after a few seconds. After maybe a minute of the LSD trip, we got he's going through this wormhole. It's crazy. It's psychedelic.
Is it a wormhole? I even with my science fiction background, I don't even think wormhole. I just think
they don't explain it in the movie, but with what I was Googling, apparently it's a wormhole called a Stargate.
Well, congratulations on coining the phrase then, in that for the French for later use.
But yeah, overall, its plot is nonsense.
Paper thin.
It's paper thin, and the philosophy is pseudo-intellectual. Stanley himself says he doesn't know what the solution is. So if the director and writer doesn't understand it, that it means it doesn't have a solution, that it's just trying to sound smart for smart's sake. This isn't a Nolan situation where it's complicated, but it has a solution. This is specifically, it's complicated, but there is no solution. So people can read into and act like it's so profound to make themselves smarter. But if no solution was intended, then it's just nonsense. It's pretty nonsense, and I enjoyed the movie. I will rewatch it at some point because of the hard sci-fi fan within me, and I know how much it's set up for the genre, so I have to appreciate it at least for how much it opened the way for hard sci-fi. But at the same time, I do have to still admit the script and the story was awful.
Right. Normally, we don't need to rely on this, but I'm going to use this because I need a leaping off point to keep this going right now. What got us here? This sci-fi film was to make you think. Did humans have external influence in their development? If so, are they waiting for us to advance level 4, second contact, etc.? My response to this is, if that's what the movie wants to make you think, there are better ways to do it than to give you drawn out visuals, to have minimal dialogue, and to make I appreciate when a movie or a show treats its viewer with the respect that we can make these conclusions ourselves, but you know what, you need a little bit of something to grab onto to start to think.
There needs to be the information provided to come to those conclusions, and it is there, like the whole idea of external influence for their development, but it's so minute.
The monkeys touch the monolith and then decide to use tools. Obviously, the monolith influenced them. Obviously, the monolith moved Dave to a room where he lived out the rest of his days perfectly taken care for, if not bored out of his mind, until he points at it at the end, and then it transforms him. I'm assuming it transforms Dave into Space Baby and sends him back to Earth.
For some reason.
Which
Stanley doesn't know. He specifically talked about the Space Baby thing. He doesn't know why he did that. So, yes,
drugs,
there is...
Drugs is why he did that.
That's why. But the idea of the entire movie being about that, I don't accept, because it only really plays an impact in the first little bit and the last little bit, whereas the rest of the movie is not super connected to that. This movie you could literally trim out everything about the monoliths, everything about the Stargate and just say, hey, these guys, they're the first people to go visit Jupiter. They're going to go study Jupiter and just be the first ones there, which is totally something people would do as soon as they have the technology. Just, hey, these are explorers. They're going to Jupiter. Great. And have the entire movie be about them dealing with Hal. And that would be a substantially better movie. But
you don't need the metaphysical. The metaphysical honestly ruins this movie. Your attempt to make people think is arrogance by Stanley Kubrick.
I would agree.
Oh, Stanley Kubrick thinks he's such a big brain that he's going to create this thing that is going to make people think for generations. And congratulations, you have done that, Kubrick. Wherever you're sitting from, watching us from someplace, hopefully you're burning. I hate the man. I hate the man. I think he's a horrible. He is not truly talented. People suck his dick far too hard. And what you had here, though, is great. You did that. We're still talking about it 50 years later. Great. Congratulations. But you know what? We're talking about it for the wrong reasons. And but the fact that you're arguing about it makes it great. No, I'd rather argue about plot points and whether or not this plot point worked. I don't want to argue about whether or not this movie even needs to exist. Because I question, what does this movie need to exist? Because look at future science fiction. Has this really influenced science fiction as a genre?
I would say so. But it opened the idea for better stories about the subject matter, like rogue AIs, like Stargates, like evolutionaries being done by.
But can you say the book did that, not the movie?
Oh, you could say, okay. Yeah.
The actual source material.
Say that.
The source material is what did that, not the movie.
I would say that the biggest impact that this movie had to justify its existence is, again, tech demo. If this movie were nothing but a tech demo and the plot didn't matter, it's just like, hey, look at the visuals that we can make, I'm okay with its existence as a tech demo. But as a story, as a plot, it fails in even the most basic respects. But as a tech demo, I absolutely adored it from a tech standpoint, both in universe and from the filmmaking perspective.
I can respect that because sometimes that is what you get out of a movie. I mean, we've just a slight tangent. In other streams lately, we've been talking about the Final Fantasy franchise, and whenever we're talking about it, people bring up Final Fantasy Spirits Within. Garbage movie, but a technical marvel because it was basically Square Enix showing off the current level of the CGI technology they had accomplished for realism. And going forward, CGI technology has been based off of that. That was the top of the line of the day. And it's like, look what we can do. Look how real we can make this. So I can respect that perspective, that as a filmmaking technology standpoint, as a leap, as a milestone, great. All right, I'll take that. It gets a point, Jed. It gets a point for that. But I still, when you talk about science fiction as a genre, I don't count them because the books accomplish that.
Yeah, the plot that people imitate is because the plot from the book.
10 years later, during this period of time, we have Star Trek. Star Trek is up and running. This is 68, so TOS season 3 has just ended and just been canceled, right? I think I'm right on that.
Oh, yeah, Star Trek is definitely started by that point, even if it was just
I think season 3 is over and they've canceled it, and it's going to go dormant for 10 years until motion picture. But Star Trek exists, and we have an example of science fiction that is capturing the hearts and minds of people. Doctor Who, like you said, is in full effect, and in England, capturing the hearts and minds of a generation, and it'll go on to capture generational.
Oh, yeah, they were almost on the third Doctor by the time.
Okay, all right, yeah, all right, great. So that's up and running. So what this movie delivers is not a storytelling or character-driven or any sort of science fiction milestone. It's a technological milestone because in 10 years, Star Wars redefines science fiction storytelling forever. Let's not wonder if aliens are out there. No, let's just give you a galaxy jam-packed of them, just like Star Trek did. Let's intensify things. Let's not just go plodding along in space. Let's have things go octane. And have we still done introspective science fiction films? Yes. Christopher Nolan, Interstellar, stuff like that. That still exists.
I think Interstellar is a great comparison to this because a lot of people hate on Interstellar, but it did a lot of the same basic stuff that this movie did, even with the whole like the aliens might just be evolved humans from the future. That is a major theory that's around 2001.
Yeah.
That's the same thing with Interstellar. Like I see a lot of parallels, but Nolan did it better, and there was at least a solution to what he was saying.
Yeah.
With like the whole psychedelic stuff at the end of Interstellar, it actually meant something. It was like, this is what 4-dimensional space looks like, and we're going to manipulate it and progress the plot, the characters, the story. It matters.
Yeah, I am in no way a Nolan guy. I frankly can leave or take his movies. You know, I don't really care about Nolan. I'm not sold on him. But I have respect for Nolan because Nolan respects his audience. He's not doing this shit just to fuck with you. And he unlike Kubrick, he will come out and say, "This is why I did this." I'm not going to leave you in
Tenet's a great example of it. People who don't understand Tenet think the movie's bad because they don't understand it. But Tenet does have solutions. I just watched it again last week with Rachel for the first time, and she understood the movie. Like, there is a solution. It is complicated, but there is a solution to be found in everything in Tenet, unlike 2001. Nolan's a great comparison to Kubrick.
Yeah, Nolan, because and I feel as though Nolan respects cinema more than Kubrick did. And if that's the tangent we're going to go off of here, fine, because I'm looking for anything at this point to try and justify talking about this movie, because I don't, outside my complaints, I have nothing to talk about, Jed. I have nothing. I have no scene I want to praise. Like I said, I'm annoyed by great music set to ships spinning and dancing in space. I'm annoyed by this. I'm annoyed by these long, drawn-out scenes. These characters are nothing. They're just talking to deliver us from one scene to the next. And the plot is paper thin. So I have nothing to even go, well, I can latch on this. Let's dive into this. We've dove into it, Jed, already. We're only 30 minutes in, and we've exposed every little bit of what goes on in this movie.
Well, while we're on the tangent, I do want to just mention Tenet has a lot of issues, like the chat's saying. The character and the stories are horrendous. The acting is
I haven't seen
awful.
it, so I can't
Denzel Washington's son is a blank piece of wood in that movie. It's terrible, but the concepts do make sense. That's what I was talking about. At least in universe, in the film, the whole idea of reverse entropy, forward entropy, it all has a solution. Yeah. But yeah, when it comes to this film, I can't say much more than we already have to a certain extent. Yeah. Even the parts that I like the Howl storyline to a certain extent, are underutilized. Like when Dave was fighting to get back into the ship, once he figured out the emergency airlock, which doesn't make sense, but it's better than he could have done compared to other sci-fi properties. I was expecting, all right, we're going to get a good 20-minute sequence here of him fighting through Howl's control, trying to counteract.
No, I got a multi-purpose tool. I'm just gonna unscrew things.
He's just going to immediately shut off Howl. I'm like I mentioned earlier, Howl has so much control of the ship that they have to ask him to move their seats and their beds around. So can he not lock doors? Can he not just like, emergency system, emergency decompression in this area? Like, yeah, he is wearing his spacesuit, but there's got to be something that Howl could do. But Howl just stands there like, oh no, please don't. Oh no. And then it's over.
And then Daisy. And then the famous Daisy moment.
There were great moments. Like I do like that idea of the Daisy song. I really like that from that perspective. And some of the dialogue from Howl was really good. And it was just such a small piece of the movie. That's what I was expecting going in. I didn't really know anything about the monkey man.
That's the most famous part of the movie. Everybody memes Howl. I'm sorry, Dave. I can't do that.
I mean, that's clearly the best part of the movie from a script writing perspective. So I understand
it's got the most dialogue. It's got the most interaction. It's got the most meaning. Okay, we're about to be. We can feel there's something wrong with our onboard ship computer who runs everything. We're going to try and deal with it. Oh, now it's murdering everybody. Oh, problem is there's only 2 people. It easily murdered one, and then Dave magically manages to outsmart it, and it killed everybody else while they were sleeping. And it's not as though it's Hal knocking people off in strange and interesting ways as they're trying to combat this. It's just like you said. Wow, he gets in and it's over, and then please, Dave, don't do this. I feel myself dying. Talk about
it was
exposition.
So anticlimactic.
And it's how many times you have to say, I'm afraid, Dave. I feel myself going, Dave.
A lot.
I mean, there could have been for a man who abused show and don't tell so much in this movie, there could have been other ways to show Hal losing himself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I'm myriad of other ways. Like you could have shown his red eyes darkening across the ship. You could have shown.
I would have found that, Alyssa, a little weak.
That's just off the top of my head.
Yeah,
I mean,
there are definite
visuals. You could have other things. You could have, maybe you could have had Hal's tone change suddenly because maybe the fear of death caused a sudden evolution where the fear gives him actual true emotion.
Yeah.
And he said, don't do it. And it would have been, there's other ways to do it.
The idea with Hal was done so much better. And I'm going to say it, Avengers Age of Ultron, not a great movie, but Ultron is kind of in the similar. It's definitely better now in retrospect, but it's not as bad as people say. I do agree with that.
I always liked it.
Ultron's storyline is kind of a similar one where he's a perfect machine built to help humanity who gets corrupted and starts trying to kill people. It's a basic plot line. But that conversation he has with Jarvis at the beginning inside the net shows why he came to these conclusions. We see the evidence. We see how he connects the dots.
Yeah.
And then one of my favorite scenes in that movie is at the very end, the conversation the last Ultron bot has with Vision. Like, you're unbearably naive, these different perspectives. And we get some actual psychology, some philosophy, which doesn't necessarily have a clear-cut solution in a moral standpoint, but it's an interesting discussion that people can make their own conclusions on. Age of Ultron was written better than 2001, which I was under the impression that this was a massive classic, like Citizen Kane. I had this sold to me as well written as Citizen Kane.
There's no writing to speak of in this movie.
No, it's a tech demo. That's all I can give this movie credit for, and it's brilliant as a tech demo. Like the curved floors, like I mentioned, a lot of the different sci-fi techniques, and like I said, I appreciated the show don't tell of the shoes that the flight attendants were wearing. You saw what they were, and
got my point already.
It was hard, but I don't know how much more we can talk about.
I really don't. I mean, do you have anything else? I've complained about every single thing I don't like. There's no story to really dig into anymore. I mean, you want to talk about the scientists in the first act?
I will actually mention one thing with the scientists in the first half. Have you noticed that probably about half the dialogue in this film, the two scenes with the most dialogue, are about people's birthdays?
No.
The scientist's daughter's birthday and then Frank's birthday call with his parents. That's like the most dialogue we ever get in this movie besides the scientist briefing.
Maybe consecutive dialogue. Yeah. That's weird.
Yeah, consecutive dialogue. Yeah. Kubrick liked to talk about birthdays in a movie where he didn't really say much else.
First part, when all the scientists, when we're leading up to the whole they're dancing around, something happened here, what happened here, and then look, it's a monolith again. It's a monolith. And then did it kill all those dudes with the hypersonic?
Yeah, that's not clear at all.
And I gotta say, I find the editing in this movie very, very average or below average. I don't.
Oh, the pacing is terrible. It needed a good editor. Like, I feel like if someone, not Stanley Kubrick for two big reasons right now, went back through and did like a director's cut or a new edition of this and trimmed it up, got rid of a lot of the bloat, you could get a marginally better movie.
I wouldn't be so angry if we didn't have long drawn out scene after long drawn out scene.
Yeah, a good editor
with heavy breathing or silence. Yeah. I mean,
there's a foundation in this movie. I can't see it through all the blood.
I would just be bored then. I wouldn't be angry. I'm angry right now because I wasted 2.5 hours.
It's way too long.
And the motherfucker had the gall to put an intermission in there. Had the goddamn gall to put an intermission. What are we getting an intermission for? Nothing's happened.
There's that 5 minutes of blank screen at the beginning too, at least in the copy I watched.
Oh yeah, it's blank. It's like, what do you think you are? Gone with the Wind? No, screw you. Gone with the Wind is awesome. This is not. And then read Scarlet. It's a great sequel book. All right, Jed, I got nothing else to say. Honestly, I'm gonna keep going in circles with my complaints. Do you have anything else you want to throw in on this?
Nope, not particularly. I think we've
right
it up as best as we can, because there's just not any context. This isn't
Yeah.
something that we can delve into and have contradicting viewpoints on
No.
and have a discussion on to the degree that maybe I hoped we could, because the substance isn't there. We both praise the spectacle to a certain extent, at least in the visuals.
I agree to the spectacle. I
Yes.
agree to it. I can see that point.
Without substance, it's difficult to have a coherent conversation on it.
There's no arguments to be had here. There's no breakdowns. There's nothing. It's just we could talk about the meaning of each psychedelic scene. Oh, what was it like for him to
and
be?
There's no point to that, because even the director doesn't know what any of it means. There was no intended meaning.
Are we supposed to feel the enclosing nature of being stuck in a spacesuit with just breathing and space surrounding you? The fear of spinning off to space. That's nothing to discuss. That's nothing to really talk about. Because guess what? Frank died. Frank died a lonely death. There you go. And Dave died as a kept creature. We guess. We don't know. Because again, the movie doesn't tell us. The books, the source material, if you go through all of them, may tell you. But the movie doesn't do anything to even lay the groundwork going forward.
Which is a massive failing for the movie. The books might get totally different ratings from us if that context does exist. But just talking about the movie, if he relied too much on people knowing the books, then that is a flawed perspective as well. Like, you have to balance out hardcore fans with newbie audiences. I don't think so either, but I'm sure someone's made that argument before, and that's a false perspective as well. So there's just no balance in this movie. It was all self-indulgent.
That is the best way to put it. And if you've got nothing else and I got nothing else, then we're done early today. Jed, it's your week. You get to score first.
So, like I said several times, I enjoyed this movie to a certain extent, mainly because of the visuals, the technology, because I am a fan of sci-fi and a fan of filmmaking. I watch filmmaking documentaries, so I really enjoyed the technology aspect of it from a lot of respects, but I'm also a writer, and that side of me despises this movie to the same level, it sounds like Adam is. So I'm very contradicted inside when it comes to my thoughts and feelings on this movie, but I do genuinely believe that the script was so bad that it has to degrade my score to a substantial degree. And I know this is going to freak people out, me doing an all-time classic like this dirty, but I think it's fair because of all that to give this a 5.5.
Oh, Jed,
I know you're going to do so much worse, but
oh my God, this could be a first. I don't know. Well, you're this 1 out of 10. I don't care if people call this a classic. This movie is an overstuffed, overinflated, as you said, self-indulgent jerk-off fest by Stanley Kubrick, who thinks he's got some great vision, which you have told us through the interviews you found he doesn't even know what he did. There is no point to this movie. If the books are great, it is not reflected in this movie. It is a waste of time. You get to the 1 point which you earned. I was going to give it a 0, Jed. You gave me the 1 point. It may have turned the corner on some cinematic tricks, but no characters, no story, a bunch of metaphysical crap. Not even good plot. You mentioned Age of Ultron. At least in that, there's some philosophical stuff that can make us talk and make us either agree or disagree. There's not even philosophy in this movie to argue about. They don't even go to the point of, wow, should we have invested so much time in the 9000 series, these thinking computers? There's no messaging to even talk about. This movie is a complete waste of time. As I said at the beginning of the show, turns out I like one Stanley Kubrick movie, Spartacus, and that's more because it's got a fantastic cast, which makes it great.
I would need to
and a great score. And a great score.
Yeah, every time I watch a Stanley Kubrick movie, I'm just baffled by how overrated it is. Like, even The Shining, people were telling me it's the greatest thriller in history. I came away thinking, yeah, it's kind of average, some interesting ideas, but ultimately it doesn't mean anything. Like, the whole thing is Jack a ghost? Is he there the whole time? Whoa.
The Shining's memes are better than the movie.
Yes, absolutely. And the first hour of Full Metal Jacket, from a basic training standpoint, as someone who went through basic training, very different basic training, I get a lot of enjoyment out of it. But the rest of the movie, plot is
Yeah.
Awful.
All right.
So.
That's it. I got nothing, but I do have next week's movie. I would show it off, but lag and all that. Next week, I want to watch something good, Jed, with a good story, a good cast, an epic soundtrack. We're watching The Last of the Mohicans.
Great movie.
I am gonna have some fun. Gonna have some fun with that one. All right, so thank you, Jed, for joining me this week, and thank you, chat, for being here across both our chats. Hit those like buttons, subscribe to the channels, and we will see you guys next week. Until then, guys, take it easy. Have a good night or a day wherever you may be.